Okay, guys, we're gonna get started. So I think what our objective is tonight is to try to get through the land use implementation plan. So this is the document that I'm gonna be working off of.
And I have some copies here for anybody who
This-
needs to.
This summary doc, which is at the end of the land use component. And it should start with land use goal LU1. And I think that as we reorient ourselves towards the verbiage in here, you're gonna see that on the left-hand side, when we got to land use, an awful lot are co-referenced to housing or economic development strategies that we've already gone through. And either they are directly the same or they're related to them. Is that correct? They're directed or they're related to them?
They're related.
I think they're related. And again, there will be a goal, and then there'll be a specific recommendation, a means to implement it, who has the primary responsibility, whether or not it's a high priority, medium, or low, and then what do the funding needs or potential resources, are they low, medium, or high? Okay. Any questions on all that stuff? So the first one is LU1, which goes back, again, what that's referencing is, if you went back in your document, you can see the goal that came out of the description of land use. And the goal was to use regulatory tools, meaning zoning, subdivision regulations. Any traffic calming would be a regulatory rule if it was, and I guess you could say be, but those kind of, to encourage new development, redevelopment, or preservation. So those are the three things that we deal with in most of the planning board's responsibilities. Preservation or of natural and historic resources consistent with the vision of each area for the town. So that's the land use goal. These were all done by Community Opportunities Group in conjunction with all the work that they did with us over the last year and a half. But this is their document that we're gonna be reviewing. So, the first specific recommendation under this subset of to encourage new development, redevelopment, or preservation is to adopt zoning for highway-oriented commercial areas. Now for us, that really is only a few areas. It's the BLI along Route 1, and it's this area, and it's Pearson Plaza, and Scotland Road. So those are the three areas that they're referencing when they say that. So adopt zoning, I mean, they could say expand that, I guess that's what they're saying, for highway-oriented, no, it's not. They're not saying expand, to allow a mix of multifamily and or commercial development and revitalization of existing developed areas. So that's an important thing, because it's saying in those commercial areas, do we want to encourage residential mixed-use development in those commercial areas? Because that's something to talk about. 40R is one. 40R, for those who don't remember, was the project at Little River. And it's also one in Newburyport, right at the traffic circle, or at the train station, which is being put forward by the city of Newburyport, together with, I forget remember who the developer was for that?
For the Newburyport one?
Yeah, but maybe it doesn't matter, but that's a 40R project.
I thought Minco was.
Yeah, Minco, it is Minco, right? It is
Boston Way.
Boston Way project, right.
That doesn't seem to be going anywhere, is it?
I think it's slowed for, the city has not approved the 40R, am I right? I don't think it has.
Oh, if they have
They
the
do?
40 yards, the problem with the development. That's the way I understand it.
Just that the development's not penciling, just not making financial sense.
Do you need a copy of the land use?
Why don't you go,
Don't know. mean, you're right, I followed it closely for a while, in fact, I went to a few of the first meetings, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and then I just assumed it would happen, and then, of course, it hasn't, so I wasn't sure what happened. So that's what this is saying, is that we, and it doesn't say you have to do it, it does say adopt.
There may be-
I think the work program here would be to have,
Investigate or
to have the planning board look into it.
something.
Mhm.
So I think I would maybe change that language to say, and analyze, zoning that would include mixed use and housing within these areas. That I'd be more comfortable with than saying that we need to go ahead and adopt it.
Now, you got the recommendation, but it seems like the 40R is the only thing for how to do it.
Well, I think we could say, consider using 40R or other smart growth zoning provisions, because there's all sorts of other tools you can use.
But there's really just that one place for 40R, right? I mean,
Well, there could, you could do a 40R in Pearson, you could,
I mean, you're thinking of the highway system.
Yeah. yeah.
Housing,
I think at one time, bus service used to have at least one bus that would go into Pearson Plaza, where the commuters could continue on to Boston.
Could that
So
be-
that's the transit connection.
You revisit that. That was CJ,
that was
right?
one of the proposals that came out of the, I think, the survey. I'm not sure
That actually
it's workable,
kind of makes some sense. It's underutilized, the parking.
but the trend has been for the commuter service just to be operated out of one location, which is the Newburyport Park and Ride lot. Used to be service coming out of Amesbury, it's gone. And the Pearson Plaza service has been gone for many years.
Well, I can tell you, using Newburyport, the parking is really very difficult. So now they have valet, and, to have another place where to park cars.
But the C&J,
Yes, and it's used.
because it's always overused.
It's free.
It's free.
It's free.
That's what's.
Yeah, it's free. Why?
We should charge something, yes.
Why is that free, Tony?
Well. It is a.
Which I think is great, why is it
It
free?
is, I think it's great too, and sort of the airline people who only use that place,
Right.
park the cars there for weeks at a time for free.
Right.
But there was a policy from the NSDOT that a park and ride lot will be free. Their park and ride lots will be free. And I know that a proposal's been made to change that at Newburyport and expand that lot and at the same time introduce parking. There's also now the ability to tow cars after 2 weeks or 3 weeks, which was something that the lot operators couldn't do. They were prohibited from towing cars under mass law for a year, until last year, I believe. So it might be coming, careful what you wish for.
So when you look at those two facilities, obviously the service is vastly different between a 10-stop train that takes an hour and 10 minutes to get to North Station, and a non-stop bus, which I guess on some great days can make it into Logan at 45 minutes or so. But one is free and one costs $4. And,
We've had that discussion with the MBTA many times, when they jumped their price for parking from $2 to $4, and it seemed to us that it was hurting ridership.
Yes.
And the
Yeah.
numbers we saw.
right,
But they were steadfast in their belief that that $4 fee was gonna earn them more revenue net.
Have
so they didn't care about the ridership.
Well, I guess they thought that the additional parking somehow was gonna offset the loss in the ridership. I can't understand how
But it
that
seems-
is, but
many fewer cars parked there now than
Yeah,
before.
I don't know how, a third
Yeah.
fewer, I think. Anyway,
Plus, it's so badly managed by the company that manages it.
Well, the other thing is that you have people who are being dropped off, and then you have people who are parking up by the CVS. all
Yes.
over those roads, so that they don't have to pay the $4.
That was one of the concerns in the, when they proposed the 40R district. It's like, when you bring in all this additional development, it's going to just exacerbate the issues that we've got with the train station.
Well, it's not directly to the issue that we're talking about, but it is interesting. I don't know what, I've always found it to be nonsensical, the way the MBTA manages their lots. Doesn't make sense. Why charge when everybody, the competition is free?
Yeah. Direct service and service to the airport to boot.
Yeah.
It's tough to beat it.
So going back to this first one, if we change the recommendation from adopt to analyze zoning for highway-oriented commercial areas to allow a mix of multifamily and or commercial, I'm okay with that, instead of directing us to adopt it. And then, when we get to the means for implementation, we say, consider using 40R or other smart growth zoning provisions to take advantage of state incentives for TOD, transit-oriented development. Are there other things we should be thinking of along that, for TOD, kind of, just say state, and that's enough?
I was just thinking along Scotland Road, what the zoning is there.
Zoning is, it's,
There's an area of commercial highway and the rest of it's agricultural residential.
yeah, it's a small area, right, just, it's a little nodule, really, it's not huge. Could be expanded, but we'd have a fight, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's on the north side right now. It might be able to be expanded, but not too much. You've got the conservation areas along there. So I'm not sure how far you could go.
And there is the state police
Yeah.
area there, is the
Right.
police and parcel, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
salt sheds, and I think that's, but you've got Salter, which I think is not
Salter
actually
is
in
not,
it.
it's not in the commercial highway?
I'm not sure. I'd have to check the parcels.
You know, there's, you know, the Havens, the deep, what do we call it, MassDOT yard there. Are they consolidating those, or, I mean, is that like an important facility for them, or how does that work? Do you know?
I haven't heard that they're going to try and get rid of that.
That would be interesting if they decided they didn't do that.
And so there's been a couple of different ideas for what you could put there, including park and ride lot.
Yeah,
But they need the salt too. It's like, where's that gonna go with?
it probably does make more sense to be down in near Pearson Plaza, though. I mean, that's further away from the other lot. Not that there's that many more, but you do have Byfield Village, which is a little denser than, the area around Scotland Road.
But in Scotland.
So how long have they not been operating that with the stuff they're
7 or
doing?
8 years.
Yeah,
And it's C&J, they just,
CJ.
they had to deal with the Pearsons?
I don't know why
was
was
it
that.
C&J or was it,
I thought it was
Coach Company?
Coach. I thought it was Coach, actually.
Yeah. And they got rid of their Amesbury service about 3 years ago. And, obviously they got rid of the Pearson service, so they're sort of consolidating, just operating basically out of Newburyport. They have the benefit of, serving downtown, whereas C&J just operates out of the parking lot.
Oh, right.
It puts all kinds of stress
Well,
on the park and ride.
Going back to the transportation thing, we didn't have that in your component. You wanna put something in there that we should look at it? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yes, no? Big deal, no deal?
See, what it would take to
Yeah,
get the service.
just put it in as a work item.
Was there any charge for parking down at Pearson's?
No,
No.
no.
So,
Now, Tony, that state-owned area right at 95 and Scotland Road, that was investigated, but it was determined to be too small. Is that correct?
and that
That
that's-
kind of triangle?
little triangle was too small, but the hope was that you could consolidate land on the north side and have a larger facility. And I think that C&J would operate out of both the existing lot up at Story Avenue and this lot, the new lot, because obviously the one at Story Avenue is not big enough. There's spaces for, there's 640 something spaces, and sometimes you have 900
Car
cars.
parked on
being
the
parked.
grass all over the place, it's a mess.
And in the industrial park, in very busy times, shuttle cars back and forth.
That's ridiculous.
In the industrial park,
So the valet service does that?
Yeah,
which, you mean down off of Hale Street?
at one point, I know that they were using that, the church that was near the rotary off of Parker.
Yes.
And we caught that on aerial photography once, and we was all, what the hell is all this? And I asked, guy at
Wow.
C&J about that, and he said, yeah, that was during a very busy time, and we had an agreement, we could put our cars there, and we just shuttled them back and forth as we needed them.
Oh, having come home on a Sunday evening during a snowstorm, trying to find my car, and they couldn't find it, I think having additional parking where they knew where the cars would be would be very helpful.
Very helpful. It's crazy when you drive by and see how tightly those cars are parked.
So C&J then bears the cost of all this horsing around, private cars, valet service and that, but it's still worth it.
That means they're making money.
Yeah, well, they ought to be, with what they charge.
It's the busiest lot in the Commonwealth.
Is that right?
Really?
Well, that's worth an article in the newspaper. That's interesting. Okay, let's move on. Item LU 1.2, which relates to the housing, goal 1.2. Refine zoning for Byfield Village, to allow a complementary mix of housing options and village amenities and encourage the development of moderately priced housing. Well, I think that we've kind of done that, didn't we? When we changed the zoning
Well, we opened it up to mixed use,
and to 4 units.
right,
So the question, I guess one of the questions is, do we wanna go higher than 4? Right, is that what this is mean? I mean, the project that is being done now in the church is exactly what we had in mind.
Right.
I mean, does 2 things, it rehabs the historic structure and puts somewhat affordable housing units in there. What are they, 5 something, well, no one else is building stuff for 500.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone else is building stuff for 7 to $1.5 million or 2 million.
The ones down near Shepherd's, those new ones, how much, those are 6 something
Shepherds?
on Parker Street.
Yeah.
In the
Oh.
Newburyport, but they're-
I think those are 675 or something like that, and go figure, right next to the auto place. And 2 are sold and another is under contract.
That's amazing.
It's Newburyport.
Well, one of the issues we talked about early on was the idea of, if we're gonna get some denser housing, one, where's it gonna go? Who
Right.
owns the land? And 2, how are we gonna service it? And so I started to do a little digging in small sewage treatment plants. Really, and I was surprised at the range and what looks like affordability. When land costs get up, these things become much more affordable. And I was looking at units from anywhere from 4 to 1,000 households that could be served by these things.
Well,
And
the example we have is this 40B that's coming before us. It's 24 units, and they've got a sewage treatment, sewage disposal, huge septic, let's call it that. I'm not sure what the technical term is, but for 24 units. And it's, how large, when you look at the map, I forget, but it takes up about 2 house lots or something
Oh,
like
it's
that.
quite, more than that, I'd say, it's quite large.
So if you have the land, you could do
But
it.
these are not land-based, but these are real sewage treatment plants where the effluent comes out and goes into a waterway. It doesn't have to percolate down.
How does it go into a waterway?
You get a
Secondary.
settling, you get a settling, basin, and I was surprised at how small some of them are. Then a treatment, post-treatment,
Yeah.
and then it goes out.
So, is that like governors?
But,
Yeah.
I think I've said this before, I'm kind of interested in how the one at Governor's Academy, you know, how does it work? How many people, how many people are on it, how much it costs to build, how much does it cost to run, that kind of thing.
so what do you know of the one at Governor's and how does it, you know?
All I know is that it didn't smell too bad when I kayaked.
Well, we can ask them and go take a look. I mean, it's not a big deal. And,
So most of these though then have to be near a river or a water source, or let's face it.
not a water source,
A
a watershed.
a watershed, meaning the Parker or the Little or one of those rivers.
So I thought they were gonna do something similar or like that for the village at Little River. They were
Yep.
gonna have some sort of a package.
And what the package is, the one in Haverhill, for instance, what they have a, time that the water has to stay in the confines of the sewage treatment plant before it dumps into the Merrimack River. So that's how long they make the pipe. Stays in the pipe that long, it's done.
So that'd be another reason why Pearson Plaza would be an interesting area, because it has water and has the ability to have the same system.
And so, looking at the places in town that have water, Byfield has water,
Right.
and we know that there is, or at least my understanding is there's a substantial aquifer under Old Town.
Right.
Both of them are close enough to the Parker River to also have a septic system capability to go for denser housing.
So that changes the whole thought about Town Hill.
Well, but it's owned by trustees.
But, you know, and question, these things are possible, but then there are landowners who have the property
Right.
to develop,
Contiguous, sure.
who would be interested in this sort of thing, but I think it's an avenue that as a town we have to look at if we are going to get, quite frankly, land prices are just going up and up and up, and affordability is an issue. Well, if we could take a lot and say, rather than 40,000 square feet, you could do 8 or 10,000 square feet, you got 4 or 5 homes that where you would have had one. Because the town have the appetite for that kind of development. And reversing the whole issue that we're seeing all over the Northeast, which is aging and not having places for young people to come in. I mean, young people we hire in our business, they're headed for inland New Hampshire,
Right.
places like that where they can afford to get a place, or places that have much smaller lot sizes. That's further down toward Boston.
We have a session next Wednesday night that you might have an interest in attending, led by MVPC. It's our housing production plan initial meeting, where the region is preparing a housing production plan, which is not so much just affordable, but it's how do you begin to look at issues like this to increase the total number of units that you need to build to remain a healthy town, you know, economically and culturally. And so, I'm not sure, Angela is gonna lead that tomorrow, next week.
Yeah, actually, do you know, is it Angela?
Probably.
Because Karen and Mike are coming as well, I believe.
So, and it's with the board, selectmen are invited, but you ought to see if you could maybe attend that, because that's exactly what
7 o'clock.
Yeah, so it'll start at 7:15.
7:15 was,
Maybe I can make it up.
yeah,
I've got a meeting that goes till 7 on Wednesday.
yeah. And so, and all of you, I mean, who might wanna attend.
This changes the whole discussion about infrastructure, because that's always been our stumbling block.
Yes.
We couldn't do anything because of that.
Well, I think we have to take a look at that.
Well, we know where we have water.
Right.
And we have that mapped, but we don't have it formally mapped. And then, if you look at this kind of an idea and where you are close to the rivers and what kind of soils are there to begin with, then you can maybe look at where increasing density might make some sense.
It's not soils.
No, it's treatment, if you can
It's
treat it.
It's not soils at all?
Not soils at all. I mean, I've looked, it's amazing what some of the people are doing in modular sewage treatment. But basically, some of them are, they look like a series of 55-gallon drums, small ones. But they have the whole settling, they have the aeration, they have the plating out on a plastic structure to remove some of that stuff. Final treatment, and it goes out as water. And the ones that can get really, really very good at treating, so that this stuff comes out we can drink.
And in your analysis, what's yeah, you. What's the cost of these things?
That again, I've only started.
That's pretty interesting stuff.
But the thing is, when we're looking at cost, one, these people have to bring them in at a cost that is reasonable or they wouldn't stay in business. And what we're looking at is the cost of land versus the cost of getting something like this and then being able to leverage that land for more than basically one house per acre in areas that it might make sense.
Have we had guys come and talk to us about this? I've never had, I don't remember. This is a non-traditional, I've never heard anyone come in and talk to us about this.
No, I can't remember anybody who has.
In your research, are there examples in Eastern Mass?
I don't know where they are, but by next week I will.
Oh, and if you had a name for it, what would the name for it?
What I looked up under was small scale sewage treatment plants.
Well, I know that there was one for a house in Essex on this old house, I didn't see it, but my son told me about it, it did exactly what we were just talking, it's potable water by the time it's done. But I don't know what it's called.
And I've seen them installed as single house units. Now it's, for a single house, it's really expensive. I would say we would have to leverage that.
Well, you do
from
that if
area.
you don't have the soils, obviously.
But it takes us away from the soils problem.
Because that really is our Achilles heel, those soils are terrible.
Yeah.
Well, it's gotta be an economic issue. When somebody can afford to do it, they'll do it. Cause we don't have the money to help them. I wonder if the state would have any money. I wonder if the state would have any through I mean, if you all of a sudden could increase your density, see, that's where it would be around TOD, and we don't have any.
That's a question.
Yeah, well, let's say,
That's a question.
it certainly would be there with the old little riverside. You could do it there, and you certainly could get money from the state to help you there.
But it's worth looking at.
So, where do we fit this in here? I'm not sure, but we will need to figure out how the small-scale sewage treatment facility because it doesn't really mean, we don't really mean just Byfield Village or around 1A. It's a broader category, don't you think, Martha?
I would think so, I was looking to see if they identified any other areas, but yeah, I think it is definitely broader.
Yeah. In fact, I would have it almost as a first or second item, because all of these then are specific to either to Plum Island or Byfield or Upper and Lower Green, and that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, well, we'll I'm not sure if maybe Angela might know something about that stuff. I mean, for these kinds of towns like West Newbury and us and other towns that don't have sewers.
Right, and I know it's a concern that was cited at the first workshop that we had in Lawrence, where the gentleman was mentioning how many communities is overzoned their land for residential development based on faulty assumptions on how much land it would take to accommodate septic.
Mm.
And that was limiting the amount of available land
Mhm.
to build units.
Sure.
So that ties right in here. I can ask Mike and Angela.
Yeah, and maybe if they do some, they'd be prepared to chat about it.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. So, going back to Byfield, I mean, I think that we do wanna have a complementary mix of housing and options in village amenities and encourage the development of moderately priced housing and I guess they're just saying here refine zoning and putting it on us to do that. I think we can do that, you know, so I'd say that's okay. I still don't know what this compact communities means. Do you know, what is that, Martha? I'm sorry for
Okay.
asking you.
No, it's,
You said I could.
I think it's, my understanding is it's kind of similar to OSRD, where you're,
Okay.
although you're not necessarily setting aside the 50% upland as open space, but it's along those lines. Tony, do you know better than that?
No.
I know we asked, how soon we forget, what was her name? Roberta, a couple of times, and I just never got an answer, or I got an answer I didn't understand. So, I guess we can't really expand OSRD, or I guess we could. What is our criteria for allowing OSRD? It's 5 units?
Well, it's 5 units or more, and then they have to set aside 50%
50%.
or more of the upland as open space. And then they get density bonuses for affordable or more open space or historic preservation.
Seems a reasonable threshold, 5 or more. We haven't had that many large projects at all. No, I think we can leave that, maybe that the way it is, and we'll either take compact communities out because we don't know what it means, or we'll come up with a better word
Yeah, I'm looking to see if it's defined in the
in her stuff.
in the land use context. I'm not finding it right away, but I think she does.
Okay. Then the third one is LU 13, which references economic development 5.2 and housing 4.4. Evaluate whether subdivision and zoning regulations reflect the character and capacity for development along the 1A corridor and interior areas of town.
What are you thinking, is that like some places having 2-acre zoning? Or, you know, I've always wondered why a lot of towns have certain areas, you know, that are 10 acres or more. I'm just curious what that is directed towards.
I was assuming that she was directing it more towards smaller.
Well, we have a bit of a conflict. Let's specifically talk about 1A, which is, you know, it's not historic, but it's a visual,
It's a scenic
scenic highway. And one of the things about the scenic highway is celebrating the landscape and the agricultural uses, et cetera. You know, and then all of a sudden, if you wind up putting dense development there, you kind of change the character of the scenic highway. So that's an inherent conflict. Let me just see what she says here. Consider appropriate standards with respect to density, dimensions, site design, and infrastructure requirements. So I don't mind, I just think both these statements are so vague, I don't know what it means. I just don't know what it
Well,
means.
yeah,
I don't know what it means.
based on that, you would think that you could not, or shouldn't change the zoning along Route 1A. I mean, you're going to affect what the character of the roadway is.
Right.
Yet aren't we discussing changing, we're changing the character of most of the community of Newbury? exclusive
Now, we do
subdivision.
know that if we ask, I mean, based on our surveys, that many people love the existing agricultural scenic value of the roadways.
Mhm.
That was Jim's statement. That was your statement, Jim.
Good.
Newbury.
You know, so that's why the Little River was so great, because that wasn't part of that. You know, that was a great place to do dense stuff. But not at the Lower Green.
You know, those scenic roads, I think the frontage requirement, it's just, I think it's always been too low, I mean, a lot of other communities, like Ipswich, it's 150. You know, that's their zoning, not 125, but that's what we're.
It's 125, yeah.
Ours is, 125.
And we did have for a while the pork chop lot, provision, which would, if somebody had 175, they could, do a back lot. But, that was only in the books for a few years, but it was to help address the issues of those really deep lots along high roads, so that people wouldn't necessarily have to do a subdivision if they wanted to.
Yeah, they were deep and narrow, weren't they?
Well, they were deep, and then it would sort of bow out like a
Bulb
pork
out.
chop. It was, at a minimum of 4.5 acres. Pork chop, right?
What do you guys think? I don't know what this means.
Yeah, I don't know.
And we should,
If we don't know what it means, we
What are
delete it.
appropriate standards?
yeah, well,
Well, we have, we've been using the OSRD for almost 10 years, longer, 10, 11, 12 years. 2004,
yeah,
Caulfield,
2004, so like 13.
Caldwell Farm. And almost every decent subdivision that comes in, we require OSRD, and it's a great tool, and developers like to do it. The one that went overboard, I think, was DePiro, honestly. I mean, the thing on Rossville Lane is very dense. I mean, I was surprised he wanted to do it that dense. But he told me the other day they sold the last two lots,
Really?
yeah. I'm happy to get rid of L13, because I don't understand it. Consider freeboarding incentive program or other regulatory changes to increase resiliency on Plum Island. This is referencing the city of Hull, town of Hull, has an incentive that goes above and beyond the normal building code requirement of raising the level of the first floor, and gives incentives, but I've never read the document, so I don't know what exactly that is.
She included that, as part of the stuff that she sent, so.
So, I mean, it probably makes sense. I mean, it's to give an incentive to do a little more to ensure safety. I mean, I think that probably makes sense. And ensure that you don't have livable space in the first, as you drive under and almost all of the homes that are being built there now, or being substantially rehabbed, do require that. Now, since we only have one resident from Plum Island here, is that about right?
I think that's the case with Concon, when there was something about.
Well, I mean, I think that, there is a lot of that comes into the conservation, enforcement of the EIOD.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in there, I think, we're stuck with 2 feet from average grade or 2 feet above base flood elevation if it's a V zone.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just a regulation, we could vote tomorrow to go to 3 feet, but I don't think.
Yeah,
So-
we can't make it more stringent than the building code, so that's why it would be an incentive as opposed to,
Can't make it more stringent than the building code. And freeboarding as a term, do you know what that is? What is,
Yeah, so that's the.
I don't know.
free, it's a free space?
The airspace above.
What kind of incentive would you give?
Um,
Allow them to build higher than the upper floors?
yeah, I don't know,
Or tax
actually.
incentive?
We'd have to, obviously, we don't know enough, we'd have to look at it. The problem we're having with a lot of this stuff of going higher is that you're going higher,
Right.
and you're changing the whole
You're
character of Plum Island. You know, it looks like Cape Hatteras,
Or you
I
can
mean,
have a foundation.
it's substantially different.
So without knowing what the incentives are, it gets to be.
So, but saying, what's the word?
So
Just consider.
Consider,
Right,
so that
right.
simply makes sense. If building department, probably we should put ourselves there
I
too,
would say yes,
because,
because it would probably be
well,
something.
Sam rarely has the time to do these things on his own. Is it a high priority? Or is it medium? High? High, okay.
We are pretty well built out.
Steve, high?
I would say it's medium, is pretty well built out, there aren't a lot of, open spaces where,
No, but you would still have the tear downs and rebuilds.
How about that new one that was just built on the left-hand side driving out? That's gotta be 20 feet high, isn't it? It's unbelievable.
you know, it's not in PIOD, so.
Yeah, it's not PIOD, doesn't come under that? The one,
No, it's
the
not
one that's
now.
just passed, oh, it's,
It's not on the island, if we're talking about the same one.
oh, yeah.
Like
Well,
Yeah, it's just past,
That's,
Bob's,
that's the
just
PI,
past Bob's.
that's the PIOD, it goes all the way down to Ralston.
Yeah, it does, goes
Yeah.
down Ross Lane. Anyway, it's not. All right, consider regulatory tools for protecting historic character around Upper and Lower Greens. Look at tools being used in similar communities. Well, I think that makes sense. Although there's often some pushback, which I've never really quite understood about, and I'm not saying I'm considering it would think that a historic district necessarily makes sense, but, I mean, look what happened to Newburyport with, you know, the route, you know, the High Street Historic District, it lost almost, by 10 or 15 percentage points, didn't it? And I thought for sure it would win, and it was like 3 years ago. Have there been efforts, anybody know, Dan, do you know if there's been efforts in the past to put historic, you know, designation around both the lower and upper green?
Well, I mean,
There's
what is
one,
it around the upper?
It's the National Register Historic District, there's nothing local,
But
there's
there's
been
nothing
discussion
local.
about it, but there was pushback, about any kind of regulation on design standards or anything like that. We talked about having a neighborhood conservation area instead of a historic district. But I think part of the concern is that neither of the greens is permanently protected. So if the town wanted to sell them,
so that's more, isn't that somewhere in here as a recommendation?
Coming right up.
Right, yeah,
Next one.
so that's more important. And what's the pushback on that?
I don't think it's ever been discussed.
So I think we should do that, designate, consider, so that, again, let's not be too, consider designating town-owned greens as permanent conservation. And then the other one becomes a subset of it, doesn't it?
I mean, if we ever get into the open space plan, I mean, there's more than just the greens.
Oh, where else, Dan?
I just can't think offhand, but, you know, the town owns land that's under the control of the selectmen, and it might, most towns would be under the control of the conservation commission. Portion of Manor Field, there's only, we have one conservation property, and that's, what's the one on Orchard Street?
Oh, Great Meadow.
Great Meadow.
I think that's the only land under control of conservation.
Well, we have some of the land in OSRDs is under, I think Colby,
But I think there is other municipal owned land, like the park behind the post office in Byfield,
right,
stuff like that.
Veterans
It's
Park.
not a big thing, but there may be more there than comes to mind immediately. But I don't think that's,
I'm turning my page to LU 17. Allow flexible lot dimensions for development of fewer than 4 units to protect historic structures and landscapes. Allow flexible lot dimensions for development of fewer than 4 units. She's got, Martha, help me out here. I'm not sure what this means.
So I think the intent is, if you're to allow reduced frontage and area, if you're gonna do a small subdivision, we've had a couple that, didn't really meet our area and frontage requirements,
So in a case where we either have a historic structure or an historic landscape, this is saying we should be flexible in our lot dimensions when a proposal comes in for a project less than 4 units. That's,
so I think it goes to what we've talked about from time to time of having sort of minor subdivision regulations, something that would be appropriate for, say, 2 or 3 lot subdivision.
okay, so I think we should look at this.
But it seems like it's a way to kind of get an OSRD kind of.
On a smaller level. So let's say, well, I don't know, I guess you could say, since it's ours. Let's see, draft zoning to allow optional reduction of frontage and side yard setback requirements for residential subdivision of fewer than 4 units in order to preserve it. I mean, it's the same thing as the other.
Wouldn't it be 4 units or fewer? So
Yeah,
if OSRD begins at 5.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that doesn't get in the way of the scenic byways and that sort of thing?
Oh, it may, that's why it says, I think it says consider or something, well, we'll change it to consider.
But I
As
think,
opposed to allow?
and I think, for example, what I'm thinking of, there was a historic house on it, and part of the recommendation, or it allowed the historic house to remain, otherwise somebody could have just knocked it down and done a mega,
Mhm.
mansion, so.
Okay, planning board, this is high though, I don't. Do you think that's high?
Well, it's an intermediate.
Yeah, I think that's. Develop policies that provide for uniform enforcement for violations of local and state regulations regarding land use and environmental protection. Is this what I think it means? Is this like taking a look at the junkyards around town? I think it is. I think this is, develop something at the local level that doesn't allow people to keep cars parked out front and use their front yard as a, gas station and stuff like that,
Would
which
be
is.
wonderful. My priority.
I mean, I think, we have enough of it right on Route 1A.
But what about just general land uses that don't seem to be consistent with the
Completely
bylaws?
incompatible. See, I thought that we actually had that in our zoning bylaw that,
There
that
doesn't seem to be any enforceability.
in AR, I think we had it in AR zones that you couldn't, open storage of things that were not related to what was going on in the structure was not allowed, just not allowed. But maybe I'm wrong, I thought maybe that's only in commercial areas.
Well, it's definitely in the commercial, business and light industrial. I think there are some regulations for agricultural, residential as well. No
But I do know, for
contractors,
example, when
residents.
we talked to Doug about the A-frame that's down on the other side of the river, everybody know where I'm talking
Mhm.
about? And he's got the VW buses and the other stuff there. He's got like 6 or 7 cars in the front, and
The other side of the Parker River, you mean?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, look at Eddie Boyle across the way there.
You mean the guy next to the,
Guy right across from that,
In the field.
yeah, I mean, he's got a, you know,
Right there.
several excavators and
Mhm.
trucks and junk.
yeah, well, it's stuff like that, that I think that, my argument has always been, it hurts the tax base, because it decreases the value of that property. All right, if that owner wants to be that way, fine, but it has an adverse effect on the property next to it
I
and
mean,
across the street, and therefore the values decline.
it's a trade-off though with some, you know, the ability to have like a construction, you know, small business operating out of it. I mean, that helps us on economic development.
And if it's a small, then it ought to be like we do with the one on, the repair station on, coming out here,
Orchard Street.
on Orchard Street, where we have it as, really as a spot zone. But that's a well-regulated business. But the one you're talking about is not.
No, I mean,
It's not even, he ought to be, if he wants to run a business, maybe we should consider allowing him to run a business, just like the guys at the corner, or what's it, the, right on the river, the Orange, they came in and they wanted to put a restaurant there, and now they have, it's a gift shop,
Right,
Mhm.
the barn,
the barn.
yeah.
So they, you know, that wasn't allowed, but they came in and they got an exception, and they're now running a business out of it. And I think that town would love to see more businesses come on Route 1A. But they should be regulated, and they,
I think this is a good one, and from what I've heard from the conversation the last year or so, is that it's not a lack of ordinances, it's we don't have a good, well-thought-out plan for how to enforce. Is that?
no, what I would get at, what, I talked to Doug about it, Doug says, hey, as long as he has his vehicles registered, I can't do anything. And so, he went up there he said he went up there, told him to move them all off, and he went and got them registered. So
Well,
as
yeah,
soon as,
that particular case, but I'm sure
Yeah,
there are
I'm
others
just-
where, yeah,
but the town has never had a strong inkling for doing it,
yeah.
you know, it's just not something that's been a high priority, too many other things to do. And unless a lot of people are concerned about it, the town's not gonna do it. So, it's worth looking at and developing policies and making, my argument is, it's a tax policy, and it's a revenue policy. And admittedly, people ought to be able to do with their property as they will, as long as it doesn't adversely affect the guy next door, and the guy this way, and the guy across the street. And if it does, and the value of their property declines, then that's an issue. Dan, you don't agree?
no, I mean, I think that's true. I just think, you know, that particular area you're talking about is not a big deal because, you know, you got a big farmer's field and, you know, it's not really like a densely settled.
Right, but the area, let's take the area where the guy is always tinkering, the hoarder. Just down from the lower green, between the lower green and the gift shop. The guy who's got the,
Oh, yeah, the right-hand side.
the
of
engine,
house.
the engine's under repair, he's got the, and every month, Sam goes down, and he finds them,
Really?
and he pays the fine, and he takes whatever it was that Sam can come up with that is in fact in gross violation, and he moves it. And every month, he's got another problem. It just,
Where
that's,
does he move it to?
I don't know,
I
but
think behind his house.
and he might put it in the house, I don't know. But I mean, he's a serial hoarder.
So, well, maybe the enforcement issue there is the fine is insufficient or
Could
something.
be.
But I mean, you know, I think this is worth looking into, and, you know, even if we conclude that there's little we can do, at least,
Ought to be looked at.
yeah,
You said,
Pete?
yeah, so when JRM
yeah.
did their thing, for some reason in my mind, I remember that there was nothing to be disposed there, it was just supposed to be a holding area. But if you ever drive by there, it's much more than just a holding area.
It's a junkyard,
And you just wonder what's going into the ground,
yeah.
you know? I mean, granted, it was a junkyard before then, but what's been going in the ground since then? And, what's going on there. So, you know, every time I go by there, I just take a look to see how big the pile is. I actually took a picture of the JRM on Route 1, and it has a totally different appearance.
You mean the one they just built?
Yeah, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
it's all contained, it looks wonderful, you know, they have, you know, a nice little display of environmental stuff out front, where we have a very different image here in our town, very different.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
I submit that affects more than the people, more than the neighbors, that affects the entire community.
I agree,
So when you drive into our community,
It looks
And you
you
see
see
that.
JRM, you said,
Well, I had had as one of the work items, I think, in the economic development, that people ought to go and talk to all of the property owners on Route 1 and find out what their plans are. And just go from there. And I had told Doug, I told Jeff, as we were talking, I said, I'll do that. I'll write them a letter and I'll go talk and I'll see in fact what their plans are. And see what kind of conversation we can have, and go from there. I mean, this town does not have
I mean, that's very different.
redevelopment powers, so it's not an issue of threatening anybody, but it's, you know, they may come up with, we'd like to do something, we'd like to maybe make some improvements.
That's from the CJ Bus like that.
Oh, yeah.
What's this one?
That's the one down in.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's not the one on Route 1, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, when I saw it being built, I said, wow, what the heck is that? It's very impressive. So we'll keep it, maybe it needs to develop policies that provide for uniform enforcement for violations of local and state regulations. No, that's fine.
you had some kind of plan like
That's what it is,
like you start with the absolute worst offenders and then work,
yeah.
from there.
And I think the way that Sam would say is that he has some guys who really are not well. Do you know what I mean? And so maybe you don't deal with them because it's gonna be difficult. You need to find somebody who's maybe just nasty, you know what I mean? Seriously, but, I mean, the guys who aren't well, I mean, the town's not gonna take them on.
Yeah.
And they should. I mean, that was the case with the fire, wasn't it? Down there where you moved last year, wasn't there a fire in a,
There was
in a hoarder's house?
on Newbury Neck Road, I'm not
Yeah.
sure that it wasn't a hoarder though.
I thought Fred told me he was a,
Oh, maybe it was, I haven't heard that.
makes no difference. Okay, adopt inclusionary zoning for conventional subdivisions of more than 4 units. Well, we don't, I see. So that's a question. How do we all feel about the idea of inclusionary zoning to begin with? Do you all
What is it?
get it and understand it?
What is inclusionary zoning?
Inclusionary zoning is,
Affordable housing.
it depends on what individual city or town enforces it. So for example, in Boston, any project over 20 units has a 20% affordable requirement. Depending on the wealth of the town and the strength of the housing market, it can get as high as 30% that I've seen. Some towns have, I think Cambridge might be that way right now. I would assume that we would go maybe, if we were to look at something, it would be maybe 10%. And if you require them.
4 units or more, you've gotta be 25%.
Well, that's.
Yeah,
fair.
right, but you can't do
Sorry.
it. So 4 is wrong. I think 4 is too small. I think you need to do more. I think you gotta do 10.
Well, you could have a sliding scale.
Yeah, you could do a sliding
have
scale.
exact
I mean,
percentage.
you have inclusionary housing, 10, you'd maybe have 20%. That feels, so you don't just wanna have one in a project.
So you say 4, 5, and 6 is 1, and 7, 8, 9 is 2, something, doesn't have to be a percent.
Just the table.
And if we did this, it would also help in our issue of the 40Rs. Because you'd have a policy in place that says, listen, not only do we have a housing production plan, but we have an inclusionary housing plan that requires a certain amount of affordable units above a certain amount. The only dilemma with that is that the way inclusionary housing works is with rental housing. Because you have one owner, and they can control the rents forever, or subsequent owners can. When you get into a non-40R, a non-big project that the state has a major role in, you've got a developer, and you've got a town, and this town is ill-equipped to, once that unit is, let's say the market rate is 500,000 and the subsidized is 250. So when the 250 guy wants to sell 3 years down the line, how do you ensure that it stays affordable?
You can regulate.
You-
Oh, monitor.
But how do you, I'm just saying, Martha has enough things to do. I mean, I mean that, because there's no one else in town that could do it.
Yeah, and outside of 40B, I mean, it's, there's a monitor built into that process.
Right,
But
there is, but this, when you do it yourself, so maybe I'm oversimplifying, maybe we need to do the research and find out, well, maybe somebody at the state can help us do this or something like that, but.
that's why I would suggest changing it to consider adopting rather than saying adopt, because I think there's some research.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so we can say, so I think it's a good idea. And I think it's a high priority. I think it's all about part of this 40B stuff that hopefully we can get priority. Now, the goal land use 2, again, we're gonna try to do it by 9 o'clock. We might have to start moving it here. And if we only get this done tonight, this will be a major accomplishment. It means we only have the community facilities to do. Undertake capital improvements to address community needs and enhance the appearance of safety of village areas. So this is very specific to the village areas. Land use 2.1, determine and carry out a plan for construction and or renovation of functional space for municipal park, all of that,
It's underway, so I think.
that's underway, we get rid of this.
Or we could at least reword it.
Reword this. Okay. Land use 2, carry out sidewalk, streetscape, and recreation park improvements in each of the 3 village areas and along Route 1A.
Perfect.
Develop plans for each one of those areas and identify funding sources. I think that's a good idea.
That's good.
Planning board, DPW, and rec commission. Anybody else involved? Probably the selectmen or the town administrator.
Both.
Let's just say town administrator. Since she already did the plan for. How is that being received?
Very well. People are really
I
enthusiastic.
drove by
about it.
today to take a look, it looked pretty good.
It does.
Yeah.
It'll be better once the gazebo's done and.
Well, when does that get done?
Probably the falls, right? I heard.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it's,
And where is that gonna be located?
if you drive in, you can see an area that's not paved with sand,
Oh, yeah,
and that's where it'll be, and
oh, that'd be good.
porta potties may get moved over there too, as I understand it. But there's some fine tuning to be
Well,
done.
that's good.
And, the selectmen voted, yesterday about parking there too, that's gonna sort itself out. As resident only parking, though, you need a sticker to park there.
Yeah, I know that. Okay, 3, support the extension of the regional trail connection through Byfield and roadway improvements to enhance bicycle safety on Plum Island Boulevard and Route 1A. Well, that we did last week, so yeah, we're just,
I went and looked.
Yeah.
1A is actually quite good down to the river.
yeah,
And then after you get past the river, it narrows quite a bit.
Parker,
Till you get to
Parker.
Parker Road, right. Scotland Road, I actually went down Scotland Road to the high school, and that's good except for Parker Street where it narrows because there's a turning lane. But other than that, the biking is really in good shape. Once you get under 95 and start going toward Byfield Village, then it, in West
Oh, that's no
Newbury,
good, that's
Yeah.
tough.
it's skinny, really skinny.
That is really skinny.
Skinny water.
No, that is really
Skinny.
Yeah,
then
and I try to
in
get off.
Byfield, it's also skinny, even though Byfield has sidewalks, but doesn't do any good for bikes.
Yeah.
So after our last meeting, I said, go ride that, take a look at it.
No, I think you're right, 1A is okay for bikes, but then you also have, like this morning, there were 2 women pushing baby carriages, you know,
Side by
and
side.
running, you know?
Ah.
No, it's great, it's great, but, you know, it's dangerous, it's just dangerous. And because the sidewalks are in such terrible shape. They
Yeah,
should
do it on the
so.
road.
No, they're on the road.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Okay.
I think
Karen.
for Plum Island, the Conservation Commission might have to get involved too, because there are issues about expanding green areas on the marsh.
Where were we?
It's not just the Recreation Commission.
Okay, and, well, you know what, okay, so your Concom, I'll bet you it's PETA too. Well, that's, we know that to accomplish this is not gonna be easy. I'm going back to 2.2. Okay. Is that okay? We'll just let that go in terms of, the roadways. 2.4, adopt complete streets, principles to guide roadway improvements. Well, we did that last week. Okay.
Right, so we should cross-reference transportation.
So we just need the transportation cross-reference. Delineate Plum Island right-of-ways, we did that last week, didn't we? Didn't we? Yeah, we did that too. Well, that was good. Identify priorities and funding strategies for infrastructure development and conservation measures to foster resilience. So I assume all of this is gonna be related to storm surge, et cetera, et cetera. Support the completion of planning, okay, we talked about this. But I still don't know where we are.
They're working on the adaptation plan now, and they're expecting to have that out, I think, in a couple of months.
And this is the Essex River folks and
Let's, yeah,
Kristen,
Kristen, right, and National Wildlife.
so we will wind up cross-referencing this.
Yeah, we'll cross-reference to natural resources probably,
We had something in transportation, I remember.
yes.
Right, I think we phrased it in terms of, you know, if appropriate, we'll do this, because we need to see what you
Yeah,
got.
Right, right.
Continue to implement the hazard mitigation plan. That says, that's also you though, isn't it? Oh, implement. You don't do implement, but you worked on putting that together, didn't you?
Yes, that was the
Right,
liaison.
so let's put planning board or planning department, well, whatever you want to put.
Does the Concom have an issue yet?
I don't know.
I'm not familiar enough with the plan, so.
And we had a team of people here that was public safety, Concom, health. So we should probably add health to that as well. Fire.
I mean, is there a published plan that you can read?
Yeah, it's on the
Yeah.
NPDC website.
Yeah. 3.3, continue to work with state, regional, and nonprofit entities to protect historic properties and agriculture. Okay, establish, maintain relationships with potential partners, identify priority sites for protection. Are there more priority sites to identify? I thought they were pretty well identified, no? Martha, do you know?
And we've done it before, we've certainly done it through the former, the out-of-date open space plan.
Do we wanna reference that? No, cause it's out of date. Cause it's out of date. Well, I mean, it's not anything that's wrong with saying continue to work with state on these things. But is there a lot of more work to do? I just don't know.
I mean, I think there are, I think there are other places that are of concern.
Okay, so we'll do that.
Fewer than there were 10 years ago.
3.4, establish a committee or partnership among existing groups to evaluate and advocate for funding to protect historic and open space resources. is it realistic to establish a committee or a partnership based on what I've gathered to be their relative non-consistent organizing, or am I wrong about that? Or is that something that's a priority that you'd get a lot of people interested in doing it?
Right.
Well, I mean, what funding sources are available?
Well, the trustees,
The trustees are one. I know that when people were looking to keep some of the open spaces, they went to private citizens and said, would you pony up some money to keep some of these open
I
spaces?
did that with Over Green, to buy the
Yeah, I
thing in the back.
And the same thing with the piece on Scotland Road. That open space.
Which was that?
That was a piece, I forget who the open space committee was, but they raised several $100,000 to,
Is that back up on Martin Burns, is that?
No, it's on the
No,
other
other
side.
side.
On the other
It's
side,
shared with
north side.
Newburyport.
Yeah,
so we,
okay.
we actually have a lot of space in town that has been preserved by outside entity.
outside entity and the open space.
I mean, I read this more has to do with the funding and, you know, always the talk on that leads to the CPA, which tends to make people go to sleep after there's nothing, there's no real money there.
I guess, is it just continued to decline, the amount of state match on that?
I don't know, but it's certainly harder to argue for.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible to argue for it these days. You can't.
Yeah, the state support is less, but still, Newburyport has a thriving CPA business.
They do. Different town.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying it's
So I
doable.
mean, you know, in terms of
It is
funding
doable.
for open space protection and what else are we looking for?
Historic.
Historic.
Historic. And it's pretty limited, where's the money unless it's a nonprofit that comes in and, in conjunction with the town, sometimes on open space, you often see, you know, the town does a CPA or something like that.
I guess,
It's a mixed
yeah,
funding source.
I guess the concern I had in reading this was, I don't remember this as coming out of all of our discussions as a high priority. I don't remember a group of citizens saying, you know, if we
had the money.
had the money, we could do these great things. Am I right, Martha? I don't.
And I think there was a lot of sort of general, and from the survey, you know, a lot of
Yeah.
general comments about
And-
people wanting to protect and
And one of the
preserve.
things we could do in establishing a partnership is not so much say that the town is going to raise the money or even the CPA, but if something is going to happen, then getting to the appropriate agencies or not-for-profits and saying, hey, we have the opportunity to take this, or you need to take a look at this in this town. So that at least they have, one, a look at it, and two, you know, they have a list of donors in each one of these towns, or donors in other towns who would donate in our town to save open space.
So this, in order for this to happen, there needs to be a champion on the Board of Selectmen who thinks this is an important thing.
That would be helpful.
It's a tool.
Could be
It's-
Jeff.
It would be, it's a tool to help
Yeah.
conserve and preserve, and so it
I
seems.
mean, that could be Jeff. So let's keep it, and, we can have a discussion with him. I mean, they did terrific work with the Sandy money they got. I mean, it was a huge amount of money. Was it $3 million? I mean, again, we MVPC, or you guys,
And
were
a lot of
the
pass-through, I forget what the.
pass-throughs, but I mean, every month, $500,000-$600,000,
Big chunk.
big chunk of money. Okay, turning the page. LU 3.5, develop a strategic plan to proactively meet chapter 40B, well, okay, we're doing we'll have to reword this, I think. Fund a study of the cost to develop water extensions along Route 1A and 1 north of Boston Road. So,
Should we?
should we? That's the question. This is something that we had in here before the discussion we had 2 months ago. When we said, well, what are we gonna do about Route 1? And is it really doable? Or is it not doable? And what happens, and how do you really get somebody to pony up the money to invest in that kind of infrastructure? And I think we had a great discussion about it, and I think we came away from the meeting saying, you know, a couple of solar panels here, solar panel there, and it looks like that's what we've got. Isn't that what everybody came up with from that?
That's my recollection. But I think it was more in connection with, should we go after economic development, you know, bringing in
Aggressively.
business, yeah, aggressively go after.
But I really do believe
Business.
that after this is done, I am going to
Go
meet with,
over it aggressively again,
Yeah,
having been on that several years ago,
yeah,
Right.
and it came to nothing.
yeah, it's
You know,
just,
because we quickly identified the problems, you know, I mean, here are the bottlenecks, here are the constraints. Unless we're gonna clear those constraints, unless we have a very different idea of what this town is going to be, it isn't gonna happen. And the surveys come back, every time the surveys come back, they say, no, isn't gonna happen, that's not what we want in the town. You know, it's that tension between we'd love to get the money, and we don't wanna change anything to do it.
and you know, even when we had the money discussion, as a percent increase to the total town revenue, it was peanuts, you know, it was, I don't think it makes sense.
So we should make sure to delete this. You think, John?
I hate to do it because it was my idea,
I think it's a great idea.
but I'm,
We were consulting before.
you know, yeah, I think we should, there's nobody jumping up and down on the Board of Selectmen saying they think we should do it. Not one, I talked to Jeff about it, and it would be us.
Do you have any idea what a study like that would cost? I mean, if it's,
Probably
No.
$30,000 to $50,000.
it's not a lot of money, I mean, there's no harm, but.
Even with not a lot of money, what are you gonna do with it when you die? Cause you look at, I mean, go down Route 1, and really quickly you get into the marginal lands and wetlands and things like that. It's, we don't have a, I mean, we spent years looking at this, quite a few years ago, and it just didn't pan out. We couldn't make it pan out then, but maybe you have a better idea.
You have, no, because the best property's gone. And so, and that was only 15 acres. So you're left with JRM. It would be nice if we could have them clean up their mess. And that's not a bad work item. I mean, maybe going back and being very specific and saying, work with, we may have some language in there that's like, but work with JRM and other abusers to clean up their act. I mean, why not?
It's certainly more achievable.
And, yeah, I think it is. You just go down and chat and have a little talk and see what happens. You know, you get something, no, we have no ideas, we're not gonna do anything. And then we do have in some of the real offenders, I mean, they are mildly out of compliance with our codes. You know, so you can play that. Right, I think we should take it out.
I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here for a second. Would it make sense to keep in something?
Saying consider funding?
Explore in the future.
No, I'm thinking about, the Little River and the JRM areas specifically, whether it would be worth that question, just for that area, kind of closing the loop that goes down Hanover Street. So when the solar panels go away, and
30 years?
then it might be positioned, but maybe that's too far in the future to even think
I
about
mean,
it.
it is a 30-year deal. They're in for 20 and they've got 2 5s.
That's 2 or 3 master plans away.
No, you're right, and that's why I said.
We'll
maybe it's just
revisit
too
that
far
one.
away.
Well, maybe my kids will.
His grandchildren.
Grandkids. Okay.
Worth a try.
Martha, well
Sorry.
done. Well done. Okay, further evaluate the need for and options available to provide, oh, I hit, now, see, now here's
Yeah.
something different. Wastewater treatment to serve existing homes and businesses and possibly new development, especially around the highway commercial. So we can keep the especially if you want, but that's exactly what you were just talking about. Okay, so that's it. And then, but this other one is identify properties or areas in town experiencing failing wells and or septic systems. So those are 2 different items, of course,
Yes.
but I think those should be identified, and I think that we should find out where we have failing wells and where we have salinization intruding into wells near the Great Marsh, et cetera, et cetera.
How would you do that?
They must, Board of Health must be keeping records of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the septic systems are concerned, those are usually discovered, at the time of sale, and then they have to be upgraded anyway. And if there's an issue, with a well, I'm not sure.
Does that?
Well, there was a,
Through sale, I mean, again, through sale.
I mean, Old Riley Road is just horrible water, I mean, it's just basically salt water.
Is that right? I didn't know.
And, there was a lot, I don't know if you remember that, or if you were on the conservation, but there was concern about one guy had an easement on a property that was gonna be developed, and he had his well, in this easement, and he didn't want the pilings or whatever was going in there to wreck his well, but his well was so bad,
Might as well take it right out of the river.
Yeah.
But going down, it was probably cleaner.
I know.
It's just a little bit of fresh water sort of floating on top of the salt. Almost all of them, I think.
You gotta drop in that
Gross
salt
and-
water, let it collapse.
Get a couple dozen faucets, because you're gonna be replacing them about every year.
So, but how do we as a town identify the wells? That would only come up
Just
at the
don't-
time of, somebody does a sale, they test the water,
That's about it.
but it wouldn't come to the town.
It can-
Well, I think if there was an issue, that would go to the Board of Health. But,
If it's an yeah, I mean, if you go to sell your house and you don't, and the test of the water is highly saline,
Or if it has a high rate on, the town doesn't know that, it's just between the buyer and the seller.
right,
You know,
and deal
what
with
do
it.
they- Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can build I don't think you can get an occupancy permit if you don't have a well, you don't have a water source. But if your water source was bad, I don't think they'd kick you out of it.
Mm-mm.
hmm,
It would be an interesting study, just to go around and take samples of water. It's a very simple test, a little,
oh, I have mine done all the time, you're on town water.
we're on town water and we have well water for irrigation.
Hmm.
But, just a simple salinity test
Yeah.
is, that we could find out where in town this is happening.
We could,
You could map it.
you could, I mean, I have, we had ours done when we bought our house, and so we put a reverse osmosis system in.
Could we find funding for that?
I don't know.
Well, that's for the whole system, ours is just for drinking, ours is not, I mean, it's not that bad.
Well, that, when it's that bad, you have to do the whole house.
Right, right.
Plumbing just goes.
Right,
cheese.
and ours is no, it's just drinking, I'm sensitive to salt, so. And it wasn't an over the chart,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, it was just one of those things I said, I'm not comfortable with that.
So if we know it's a problem. in
But
town,
you're right, it's 30,000
should we
for the
look at
house.
it?
I think that's what I'm, to do the whole house.
The question is, if we look at it.
So what would it cost
what
to
are our
link
findings?
up with,
Yeah, that's,
when they're bringing the biofuel
Well,
water down your street, what's it
it's-
cost to link up?
it's. a,
15,000, I'll bet.
It could
You know,
be an
anybody know?
issue in development of the town. You know, if we look at
What?
It was 20,000 for water and sewer on Plum Island.
So it's
Round numbers.
15,000 for water, I'll bet 10. So it's not it's a high amount of money, but it's not like crazy to put an RO system for your whole house.
Is
Now,
that-
that's off the top of our heads, we're just kind of slinging numbers around, but.
Yeah, I don't.
Is that still the most common technology to deal with? Select-
Well, there may be a newer one,
Yeah,
but,
it's horribly inefficient. I think for
Well,
every-
it uses a lot of water.
Yeah, for every gallon of water you get, you spend
3, yeah.
3 or that, something like that. Yeah. I mean, if you're doing a whole house, man, that's,
Yeah, it would, as you say, it's only for potable water. You wouldn't do the showers, washing machine, toilets, any of that stuff.
unless it were real bad, yeah.
But with increasing development anywhere and you drawing down the water table, you're gonna see more saltwater intrusion. Because the
It's
salt
my
water's out
guess.
there,
it's my guess.
and that's aside from sea level rise.
So it's
issues.
worth the town maybe taking this a little more seriously than in the past, and I guess we don't know how to approach it, but certainly going around testing susceptible homes is not a bad idea, but my guess is everybody who lives near the marsh has a ton of hill. You do?
I mean, this particular item is, it sort of starts with wastewater, but we've been most.
Went right into, yeah, so maybe we need to separate them. Yeah, let's separate them.
I mean, I don't think there's really any place in town that doesn't have any, there's no water, you know, you just, I've never really heard of anybody drilling a well and just not having any success, although,
Not hitting any water, you mean?
I mean, I think, you know, we do have quite a bit of water.
There is water.
I mean, you have those salt marsh areas that have
I got a gusher,
another part.
let me tell you. I have a huge amount of water supply. I could do 10 houses. Based on what Rollins told me about when they dug the well.
And they went down to bedrock,
I don't know. They just,
because once you get deeper in, that's when you will also increase the chances of getting saline
Mm.
water.
I mean, I think in my area, Boston Road, you get over like 50 feet and you hit rock and you, they just cased into that rock and keep going.
Right, in terms of storage sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's, you say bedrock, I mean, I think you hit bedrock at about 50 feet.
what do you hit on Plum Island? You just keep on going, don't you?
Yeah, it's a long, it's a long way to rock. But, yeah, within that sandy aquifer, it is saline at depth, because you've got a
Sure.
freshwater lens sitting on top of the more dense salty water. And, back before water and sewer came, when there was a period of very, very low rainfall, you can see the quality of water now, little 10-foot dug wells went markedly down. You can only use it so many times.
I would think the Board of Health has, you know, sufficient
They probably could,
Records
yeah, it'd
to
be interesting
kind
to
of-
see.
map the whole thing out.
Probably, we should, are they here now? Are they, their office is here?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And again, some of those old lots to Title V, may kick in where your well is too close to your septic system, and that causes.
Yeah, from older homes, I'm sure it does. Objective 4, foster community engagement within each village area and town-wide to encourage participation and build support for town initiatives. So this came, I know this came from the surveys, and was then amplified when the town was forced to move here for a 3-year period. That's what we still think it is, right? 3 years? And what the town needed to do to re-engage the community after that occurred. So that's what these LU, although they're land use, there was a separate subcommittee that dealt with community engagement. And I guess they didn't know where to put it, so they put it in land use. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, the community engagement, the group didn't even really, they focused more on trying to get the word out of that specific stuff as opposed to talking about these things.
So encourage broader participation and leadership through ad hoc town or town appointed committees focused on the needs of each village.
That is a great idea, I don't know.
So there's
how
a
you do it.
strong village identity here, there's a strong identity on Plum Island.
There's none in Old Town.
There's none in Old Town, none. So who was the great, was it CCNY organizer? Saul Alinsky, wasn't that the guy's name, University of Chicago? Am I right, got that, isn't it Saul Alinsky?
Yes.
Yeah, we need Saul Alinsky to start organizing our guys in Old Town, that'd be fun to watch. Well, I think that's fine, encourage broader participation, recruit leadership members, et cetera. Yeah, Byfield organization, that we don't, is there a Byfield organization? Nothing. So that's why there's work to be done
But,
there.
you know, for not having a Byfield organization, they get Byfield days off every year.
Yeah, I don't know who organizes that. Yes, it does happen, and attracts a lot of people.
Right.
Yes, it does.
It's Heidi and Linda mostly, isn't it? Doing that.
It had always been the fire department and people in the fire department who had done Byfield days. Because the fire department put on the barbecues, fundraiser, and then they had all of the different games. So whatever organizations were in town got together. When the Yellow School was active, we were part of it. Scouts gets to be part of it. You know, people who have no organization at all, they just throw themselves in it as well. And
And the
they just parse out, you know, who's gonna run the race, who's gonna, we used to have canoe races and kayak races on the park.
On the river?
Yeah.
And that community arts center is really a going concern.
They got hootenannies there every Friday night.
They've got something going all the time, it's amazing.
So who are they? Who is the community arts center?
A lot of cars parked.
Community Arts Center was an offshoot of Yellow School. And what happened was, they had a dance, interesting stuff, they had a dance in the, what is now the Community Arts Center, the Grange Hall. And somebody went down and said, this floor is too flexible, and you guys aren't doing anything about it. And Vince Russo got up and canceled the lease to the Yellow School. The next meeting, Heidi and Linda put a letter, and they were members of the group, but they put a letter in saying, well, we'll manage that for you. And so the selectmen said, okay, you guys manage it. It was really a cluster of the first class. And so there was a suit between the Yellow School and the town as to who was right, who was wrong. Finally petered out, and the town then ran the Grange Hall under Heidi and Linda as the managers. Well, they couldn't get funding that way, and so recently they became a 501c3, and are operating under a 501c3 now. But the town, we had the responsibility for the building, Yellow School being sold, of course, but we had the responsibility for the building and did repairs to the building for the Community Arts Center. When we had the whole campus, we had actually built a septic system
Right,
on the site of the Yellow School to
Know
take
that.
care of both of those
right,
buildings.
we knew that.
And the Grange Hall never got hooked up, so the people who bought that building have a huge septic system. You know, it's just, we can do anything.
How
So-
has the Byfield community responded to Chris Horan's projects? He's the one who did the Yellow School and he also did the church.
I have not heard anything bad about it. People love the look of the Yellow School, he's done a nice job.
And he has some energy for making improvements in that area for,
Yeah.
so I think there's some potential there.
I think you're right.
Well, we thought it was all the right thing to do, but you never know how a community is gonna react, and he had very strong support when he was going in. It just that, there's always those who say, no, just, never know what's gonna happen, but, and especially a community like that, you know, it's small. I've always been quite pleased to see the quality of his work. And the fact that he's got at least one sold, am I right? Is it-
Yeah, I'm not sure how many now,
What, the
the
Of the
units.
condos?
Yeah.
all four, so,
All four?
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, haven't done for a month.
Oh, that's great news.
That's what we hope.
Well, he must be very happy.
I know he said that, but I wasn't sure if they actually went for it.
Yeah, right, I'm basing that on what he said when he was
Right,
here, yeah.
right. Right,
So there's no way to tie in
Is it-
the old Grange Hall into the current new building developed,
no.
even at night with the backhoe?
We didn't
One,
say that.
you'd have to get somebody else, I'll bring that back on. And two, I don't know where you'd tap it out, you know? I mean, the plan was to have a lift from there up to the septic system. Easy to do,
Right.
if the town had both properties, but now that it don't have both
Right,
properties.
but the
we
lot
can't
line,
do it.
lot line between the two was changed, and there was an area that's set aside for a future
Right.
septic for the Grange.
So what's it doing now? The Grange?
They put it in the back,
For
didn't it?
Well, there's an existing system there,
Yeah, there's an
which
existing
is
system.
functioning.
Just it never hooked up to the
Right,
to one.
they-
To the big,
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay.
When I look at this and I was, you know, it's clear Byfield has this village feel with, you know, you've got the Grange Hall, you've got the library, you've kind of got these public spaces, that's what this thing's about. In Old Town, I mean, we don't, you know, there's nothing, I don't know
It's
what's
nothing.
there,
Nothing.
you know? There's the outdoor spaces,
Right, there's the
the
upper green.
greens, but there's really no sort of community meeting place, if you will. And, Plum Island, you know, Pettit Hall,
Mhm.
the Beachcomber, you know, you've got all kinds of spots there.
Well, you know, you could go back to the old days when the meeting house and the church were one and the same and make a deal with the first parish church. You know, I mean, they've got meeting space in there. It's a great community space and, you know, the town could make a deal with them. It'd be a great place to have meetings.
Actually, it's a great idea.
Just go back to 1635, when they were one and the same.
My wife's family has been going to the first, you know, the first parish church there, whatever, for years. But
It's a
not-
great church.
Not anymore, I mean,
Nobody goes.
it's done.
Is it done?
I mean, I don't,
When I go by on Sundays, it's like 10 cars.
it's too bad. Because they had it's a nice building.
Well, that's an opportunity for both.
Well, so that may be an interesting opportunity, because you can't lose the building. And the building is the town's identity in many respects. And it was always the first congregational church, right? That's what we were. Then there was one in Byfield, then there was one in then there was, no, all the Congregationalists were those are the Puritans. No.
mean, it's a long story, but just talking about it here is kind of interesting, because it is an important thing to maintain in some way, but how do you do it? It's really difficult if you don't have a congregation.
What's the first parish church of Newburyport? Is that St. Paul's? No, it's Episcopal.
Yeah, it's
No, well, there's
There's
the
Belleville.
new church is called the First, something or other.
There's the Presbyterian on Federal, and then there's the, you go to the one on.
Central Congregational is the one, right there on Pleasant
On
and
Ple-
Titcomb. And then there's the First,
So that must have been the First Newbury Congregational, then it's now
Well, that's
called the Central.
well, that's
No?
a combination of three churches, one of which was the North. It's got quite a history, it goes back to 1780 something.
Right, it was probably when they seceded from the town of Newbury. And they created their own church and meeting house. The first meeting house was down here, or Lower Green. Then they moved it up to the Upper Green, then it burned, then they moved it again. And this one, 1814, what's the date of the church? Something like that. It's a beautiful church. And it's one of the few that doesn't have men's and women's entrances. Yeah, they all walked in together, but most of them had men's and women's
At one
entrances.
time, yeah, most
you
of
know.
them have changed that now, but like ours, it has a single central entrance, but.
I think the Presbyterian has separate ones. All right, I think it does. Anyway, that's enough. Organize events and programs utilizing public and community spaces within each of the buildings. That makes sense. I just don't know. Telling the recreation committee to do that, I think that's fine. But it sounds like, what, Heidi and Linda are doing it, or whoever the
Heidi
people are.
and Linda, the Community Arts Center are doing it, Recreation Space, Recreation Committee is, I talked to Mark this weekend, he's working really hard on trying to get, that activated and some things through with the town, so we've got people who are very active
Good.
in trying to get that stuff done.
And then it's increase Newbury residents' awareness of access to community spaces and recreational assets, create signage, maps, programming, and notation. I don't know, my guess is that stuff is done most of the time, isn't it? Recreation Committee and DPW, does that make
The
sense?
Open Space Committee always had a goal of trying to come up with, a town-wide trail map,
Right.
that kind of thing, but it never really happened. Like, a lot of it was just due to Fisheries and Wildlife not wanting to have any publicly distributed material about their place.
Is it realistic for us to have these things in here that really have nothing to do with the planning department or recreation committee, recreation and DPW? And then what, we have meetings, Dan, with those committees after the plan is done and say, here's what we want you to do? Or,
Yeah, well, okay, let me tell you, Recreation Committee, I meet with them regularly, and they look for what do you want us to do? What is the mandate?
okay,
And so, we had the same thing with Finance Committee, when we were having we were loggerheads over a couple of issues. Some members wanted to do one thing, someone wanted to do another, and then we said, well, where's our mandate? And this is our mandate. So what you put in here is a guide for anybody in the town to say, this is the mandate, this is what we look for. So it's not your document, it's a document for all of the organizations within the town.
so maybe when the plan is done, we just have to have, or before it's completed, maybe a meeting with the recreation committee and just sit down and go over the stuff that's germane to them.
Yeah.
Because they've really not been part of this process. Okay. Establishing economic development task force to recruit and advocate for the needs of businesses that provide amenities to residents in the villages.
I would take that up.
Well, I think this was reworded slightly to reflect that conversation we had, so it wasn't promoting new economic
existing
this-
groups.
Yeah, I remember that, especially home businesses, how can we,
Yeah.
home-based
how can they
businesses and-
network?
So this is something that we,
That's a good thing.
yeah, I think it is a good
Okay.
thing. Also, I wanna make sure that there's somewhere in this document that directs the planning board to do those things out on Route 1 that I was telling you about that I wanted to do. Otherwise, I feel, it's, if you go out and you talk to all those strip commercial stuff on Route 1, it was the old car dealerships. You say, well, it was a priority of the master plan, and that's why I'm here.
Mhm.
That means a lot more than, hi. I just wanted to chat with you. So, well, I wanna make sure that's in here someplace, that we have that, to work on redevelopment or whatever you call it. Hold public meetings to discuss townwide municipal needs in various locations, well, that's fine, I guess. Use a variety of media, including townwide website. I think they're increasingly doing this. Now, is you televised now?
Yes.
Are you, good.
So we televise CPC and FinCom are both.
And what about you guys, Concom?
Yeah, I think-
Wonderful. So that's a big change. So maybe we don't have to say much about this. This is really what we're after, was to expand, the TV.
I think Concom, we're recorded, we're not live.
Right, I think planning and selectmen are still the only ones that are live.
They should all be live. Oh, they don't have the personnel to cable can't do it.
I think
Caleb.
The goal is to have that happen, but it's.
Well, then we should put that in, still is the goal to, okay. To be live. All right, last guy. Increased communication coordination between existing community groups in order to share information about events. I don't know. Seems, it's good. Schools have always been a great help for us. Do they help you guys out too? No?
Is the school committee on?
I don't know, actually.
That might be something to add as a goal.
What is that?
The school committee meetings, I'm not sure if they're,
Yeah, but that's not us. Is it?
some of that Never Neverland of,
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
It's
Triton.
district.
That's Triton.
but.
So that's
it's half-
part of us.
It's part of,
Right, it's, half the town's budget, round numbers.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice if it was a little bit more transparent.
let's put it in. See what happens.
Sure.
I mean, I will say that Brian has been extremely helpful.
Yep.
In every question that we have asked of them. And if I posed it to him, I will get an honest answer. So, okay,
Well, because if it is broadcast, either on tape or live, everyone can probably better appreciate what the school committee does.
And he has been out talking with everyone,
yeah,
basically, and so this would be very congruent with his efforts so far.
it would be. By the way, I saw something in the paper today, that there was a Forget, who was the police commissioner in
Oh.
Salisbury. Anybody ever hear that? You might have a relative who's, it's not your usual name. It's 9:03. If you would like, we can start to go through, the, community facilities section. It's not the same format, but it is also only maybe 3 or 4 pages. It's whatever you guys wanna do.
I have a question, if I can kind of hook into the last bit. Is there ever been any talk about trying to do a zoning change in Plum Island Center to, actually reflect the composition of the neighborhood there with businesses and,
I think that every time I've thought of that, the answer has been, well, you can't put anything new out there because of the PIOD. But, which is the Plum Island Overlay District.
I just always thought it was kind of crazy to have stores and restaurants and bars and
So,
they're all, and they're in residential agricultural zoning, you know.
just
Or-
do a zone that reflects the reality.
Well, I don't know, it just, I mean, I think at some point, there might be a need to, you
Is
know,
the-
have more service.
Well, let me ask Mr. Plum Island, what,
Well, he's not here to.
what, what would be the consensus of that?
I think when people are moving out there, they would seek amenities to be available. I think whatever happens to Angie's service station and surrounding properties would be a real telltale. What is,
It's from Anna
current order
Rosa's.
is the cottage, and what are they gonna do with that rather large land holding? Some of it's gonna be parking lots. I've heard rumors that part of it may become another restaurant across the street from the Plum
Best
Island
cook
Grill.
you ever had.
But there seems to be a desire among the people that come out to the island to, you know, live, eat and drink and live well, but when the,
Residents, you know.
right, but when the Beachcomber, went before the selectmen to try and get the okay to have music, that became somewhat contentious with the immediate neighbors about how loud the music was gonna be and how late into the evening it would be.
Right.
So, I mean, it can be done, but there'll be a lot of input about,
I just wanted to see if it was mentioned anywhere or if it was worth.
Well, I'm wondering if the way it is now that every use is non-conforming.
Anything other than a single family residential use is not.
And so therefore, anytime that anybody wants to do anything in Plum Island Center, they have to come to the town for approval. Is that right?
Pretty much.
So maybe that's the way the town likes it.
but, you
No,
know,
it's not, you know what I mean, Dan? It's-
Well, yeah, but it's.
But it really goes back to the consent decree in the Plum Island Water and Sewer Project and, you know, specifically limited. So, you know, it might be worth kind of revisiting all of that to see if it makes sense and there's any flexibility there, but.
well, given that, Angie's service station area used to be a hotel back in the good old days, as I recall, there's plenty of history to look at in terms of guiding what you might wanna do, but, you know, it'll be contentious, as everything is on Plum Island, perhaps even more contentious out there than it is in any other part of the town.
I would agree. Every time I, talk about anything out there, it's a half-hour conversation with somebody, when you just wanted to say hi.
Right.
Ronnie isn't getting it, so it's.
All right, wanna give the shot at this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Wait a minute,
I'm gonna find it.
no, this isn't it. Where is it?
Rules and recommendations,
What?
community services.
Community services,
Mhm.
facilities, goals and recommendations.
And is this on a spreadsheet or is this all
No,
No.
no.
It's like this.
couple pages?
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. Now I've done it.
If I may,
Bottom of page 15. Of the
Have you got,
community facilities and services.
have you got a copy there?
May
Yeah, but-
30th, 2017.
Yeah, it was just the excerpt, just the
Here's the extra.
goals and recommendations.
I can't find it.
You wanna give it to him?
Okay.
Who else?
Anybody else?
All right?
Before we get into it, let's remind people, this is the place where my neighbors will beat me over the head if I don't mention yard waste, a yard waste facility
Oh,
as one of those facilities. We'll get there, but I just want to,
okay.
be thinking about it as we get there.
All right. So, goals and recommendations. You haven't read the report, and all you're seeing is this, so, again, this is one of these things where one of the major residents, recommendations came about informing people about what was going on in town hall. So provide outreach to residents during the transition from the temporary location of town hall at Kent Way in Vinefield. The passage of the new police station and town hall, so I'll kind of read this for you. Was a major step forward in addressing long-term facility needs for the town. However, it is likely that the design and construction will take up to 3 years to complete, meaning the renovated town hall will not be ready for occupancy until 2020. The current town hall location, although convenient to Byfield residents, is, as Fred told me last week, 20 minutes from Plum Island. During the next 3 years, the town will need to develop outreach efforts to residents to ensure they have ample and adequate information regarding town activities and services. And so it says expand TV access. So this is the first goal. Expand TV access to include telecast of more board and commission meetings, including the Finance Committee, Capital Planning Committee, Conservation Commission, among others. So maybe this is all redundant. Goal CFS 2, ensure that adequate water and wastewater facilities are available to support current needs and future planned growth.
If I could stop you 1 second, John. One thing that came out of the selectmen's meeting too, I think, was how the town website, which is good and is there, it's one of those things that needs to be updated, to be up to date with information. And some changes were made that it no longer says preliminary election results, it's got the final results.
No, I know, this,
But that's, everyone loves to design something, but then you gotta do the O and M. It's just an example,
okay.
ongoing needs.
So again, this is this water and wastewater. Lack of available water and wastewater disposal facilities and infrastructure continues to be a limiting factor to new development in Newbury. See, this is all written before our last discussion. New development utilizes on-site septic systems and wells. Limited infrastructure increases the likelihood that development will occur in a sprawl-like manner, which may result in diminution of community character. Strategies to transfer growth into village centers or along Route 1 between the town line and Boston Road or near Route 95 at Central Street require comprehensive solutions. So that's just a statement. Study alternatives to provide, so I guess is the first strategy. Study alternatives to provide sewer service to business and light industrial district. So denser development which can generate tax revenue will not occur until the ability to discharge and treat increased waste. Options to include extended public infrastructure, coordinated development. So we don't really have the system that you were talking about. So we'll just insert something here. Which I even forget what you were calling it, but it's this small scale
Sewage treatment.
sewage treatment systems. Which probably though are not a public facility, they're probably done privately.
There's a whole range, and what the contractors do, what the designers of these things do is, whoever wants to pay for them, they'll do them. You want them public, fine. You want them private, that's fine too. But that's how it works.
So Triton and Newbury Elementary must have these systems.
No, Triton has a septic.
Just a
Has a
huge
septic field. If you go to the back of Triton, there's a building.
On a rainy day, on the softball field, you'll know.
Really.
Yep,
I thought they pump it way over the other side.
They do.
they do, but you'll know.
They pump from Triton across School Street, across Elm Street to a big septic field that is on Elm Street, right next to that swale. The water then beaches out into the swale, goes under Elm Street, under School Street, and makes its way down to the Parker River. It does.
I mean, is it thought to be, an effective
Oh, yeah.
septic system?
Yeah,
It's not a problem.
No, it's not a problem. But it's, that's where the water's gonna go.
But when approximately is that?
That was built, wait a minute, I'll do this for you. That was built, I think, in 1969 and 71.
That,
And the same system's been working for all that time.
I don't know what repairs and maintenance has been done on the system. I can't tell you.
it's almost 50 years.
But they've got on the school property itself, they've got a big settling tank, and then what they do is they take out and then lift the effluent and pump it up.
Wow.
So I wonder, it's interesting, I wonder what the design capacity is for the number of students. Because
Me too.
students are declining. That helps,
Well, not so much that, it's what's gone into the system.
yeah. Okay, we're making progress.
Okay.
Study alternatives to solving the wastewater needs of the Upper Green and Lower Green, so it's basically, I think, the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, promote opportunities to preserve and protect and expand the public water supply. The town should look into acquiring any remaining well locations in Newbury, in particular known as, the one off Parker Street. The location could help provide additional water supply capacity to provide, okay, so we know that one too. Other well-known.
Should we add in Old Town Hill there, or?
Yeah, let me just see, I thought we had it in. Other well locations need to be explored that can address current or future well failures or the possible impact sea level rise on wells located in Western. Yeah, let's put in Old Town Hill. Now, do you know that for a fact, or is that, where is that?
That is,
Common
I've been told
knowledge?
that I don't know it firsthand, but I have talked to a lot of people who say, Old Town Hill's got a lot of water.
I think we need, and Fred has always said that, but I think we need to find that out before we put it in, cause it's a
Okay.
very specific thing to
Right,
say.
right.
So we'll make a note of it.
I mean, somewhere there's a study of all, and they look,
Right.
Newburyport Water Department looked everywhere in Newbury.
Yes, they did.
And maybe that was one of the spots, but there were other,
Yeah, it was back when Dave Caldwell was the water, in charge of the water board, and they were back of our place.
Like of Caldwell Farm?
Yeah.
Huh.
Boring and looking for water all the way, what they did, we back up to Georgetown and Rowley in that corner.
Mhm.
And so they started back there and worked their way out, looking for water.
Hmm.
And, so they did a lot. of
When would that
work.
have been, when they were just looking to expand? When they,
They,
I think when, it was part of the Plum Island thing too.
that's what I was thinking, it was part of one.
when they started over on the Rowley Georgetown line, that was again in, late seventies or late eighties. They were, you know, he said, we've got water in Byfield, but we're looking for where else we can pull water from. And Larkin Road was, you know, they had Larkin Road, they had a couple of other places that they looked at for water. And they were looking all over.
Just kind of, do you know where they wound up getting their water?
I don't, but I mean, I just, you know, I think there's this report, if you located it, you could probably
Where's the
be a little bit more.
There are two wells, Larkin Road and Forest Street.
Do you know where,
For Byfield.
do you know where the
For
report is?
Byfield.
Do you know where the report
Well,
is?
there's another study, and I don't know if this was part of it that Dave Mountain was involved in, but I thought that was for the Plum Island Water and Sewer, specifically in Old Town.
I mean, that was, I think, probably the most recent, when they was gonna hook up Plum Island.
Mhm.
That sort of gave Newburyport, you know, well, we're gonna
Yeah.
look for water in Newbury then.
Mm.
I mean, there's some studies out there that, you know, maybe it's not Old Town Hill.
Well, I've heard about, so I think we need to find that study.
Yeah, I'll check, I think, there's some stuff in my files that Kathleen looked at when she was
I
doing
mean,
her
Jeff
study.
should know about this, cause he was on the board,
The Old Town
the
Water.
Old Town Water District. I mean, he still is, just doesn't meet. All right, last page, guys. Goal CFS 3, improve the Council of Aging facility in the round school portion of the elementary school. current enrollments and future projections for the Newbury Elementary School are of some concern. In 1998, there were 827 students in the school. Today there are 430. And projections are that there will be only 323 by 2025. A decline of 504 students in 18 years. The expected decline can perhaps be addressed by encouraging more affordably priced housing to encourage young families to move here, the topic addressed more fully in the housing section of this plan. In the meantime, projections for those residents over 65 indicate an increase, that's us guys, of more than 1,000 residents in that age category by 2025. It is likely that this increase will put pressure on the town to expand services offered by COA. The COA facility at Round School is adequate to respond to this increased potential demand. The facility has no clear identity as an independent facility and is poorly signed. So the strategy being recommended is conduct a detailed study of the space needs of both the elementary school and the Council of Aging facility, looking at ways to improve efficiencies and services delivery through physical improvements and or retrofit of spaces within the elementary school.
You know, it's really kind of ironic to get out of school and then get old and go back.
With an A.
That's right.
Everything's small scale too, when you go back there.
First your parents helped you, now your kids are gonna help you.
But it's not.
You went holding your parents' hand and then you've got a walker.
There'll be lots of space in the school with that enrollment figure.
Yeah, I
still.
mean, if that enrollment figure.
If it stays, and everything we see in terms of stuff we see every day, in terms of demand for new space,
The demographics are doing
the
that.
demographics
Have been
are
doing
there.
it for quite some time.
The town of Rockport had a number of ads this winter in the Boston Globe saying, we'd like you to move to Rockport. If you're young and have children and want a school system and wanna buy a house, we want you to move here. Because they have the problem in spades, more than we do. Just not enough young families. And my problem with all of this is that it's not healthy for a community to not have young families. It's just not healthy. You can't
And
be.
so what is the first thing we should do on the master plan?
Build
Make the
more
community
housing.
healthy. And take a look at some of these other approaches that
Yeah.
may be able to enable us to
And
do that.
even if it goes against some of the long-held beliefs about what's good for the town. Doesn't, looking at this housing production plan, which we're supposed to be looking at next Wednesday, one of the goals is to find places of the town where we think that increased density could occur. And we have to look at that and say, well, we think it can occur there and not destroy the other fabric goals and feeling for what people love.
I think that's a wrong approach. And I'll tell you why. You're saying, I'm not gonna disturb you over here, I'm just gonna do my stuff over here. Well, if I don't disturb you, if I'm trying to keep everybody happy, the whole thing's going down. And so we have to, we have not wanted to change Newbury forever, and Newbury is changing.
Well, it's not. Physically, it's not at all, but it's changing demographically.
It's changing demographically. You look at the cost of real estate here as a function of the, annual income of people in the state or wherever. And it used to be that you could afford to get a house here at a reasonable price. People could, young people could move in. Can't do it anymore. And so this is one of the things, it's not Newbury, it's this whole area where, as there's been pressures on the real estate, it's driven those prices up faster than wages have come up,
Sure.
faster than income. And
Well,
we've stratified to older established or richer.
So in terms of strategy, it's a question, I think, of if you go into a process, and this needs further thought, and say, basically, we're gonna be looking at all aspects of the town to see where we can, where we could increase densities. That's one option, knowing full well that you're gonna get pushback. Or you say, we know there's certain areas that are sacrosanct, and so we're already targeting the other areas where we think that are easiest to happen. Now, that is the way it is traditionally gone, because you anticipate the problems before they happen. I'm not sure what the best way is, but either way, I think the way we wanna phrase this is, well, we don't know. We'll see how the meeting goes next Wednesday. Luckily, we don't have to run it, and we participate in it, and I think that it'll be instructive to see how the process goes.
I mean, the things I look at as we love to preserve are the things that people love about here anyway. And open spaces, there's a lot of open spaces we will never touch. We absolutely can't touch it.
They cannot be.
Yeah, I mean, 50% of the town right now is open space.
Right.
Okay? And that's what people love. And I know when we raised our family, there was lots of stuff to do. The fact that we're, close to Plum Island, saltwater, all of that stuff makes this a mecca, and I would not want to see that change, but an increase in the number of people who utilize some of the facilities would not change that appreciably.
No, not at all. It's just a question of where can you accommodate increased numbers of housing units? That's where can it happen, because we know that the best plans, we've had this conversation, have been used. If all of a sudden we can have a sewer system that is creative, and we're not relying on the quality of soils, and if we can use existing water systems, then that maybe opens up some opportunities. But we haven't sat down with the map yet. Maybe that, I wonder if she'll do that, I wonder if we should do that as part of the final exercise with her next week. Or is that, we're gonna meet a number of times with her?
I think there are two meetings.
2 sessions, are there 2? Do you know how they handle those?
I thought there were gonna be 3,
Three community sessions, maybe.
yeah.
Because really, I think
Two
that
open houses.
the great idea is after you've gone through, like, let's say, almost a broad general approach to this, that having members of the community sit down and take a look at areas, well, if we really had to do this, where would we do it? And really do that kind of participatory process, I think that'd be well worth it. And I'm not sure if you do it next Wednesday, or maybe she comes back in 2 months or some, whatever it is.
But it might be dramatic if you take some of those land use maps that we've looked at before and just have them up on the wall, because that sort of defines
Yeah.
the problem. I don't know whether, people are aware of that, or whether you give them a heads up, but it would seem like it sort of defines the open space, the constraints that we're dealing with.
Well,
And then you can more focused
Gerard's got all,
presentation.
our maps that we have, that we've had at meetings, they do for us, so.
I mean, they could build out analyses and
Yeah.
kind of show where there aren't any constraints or reduce, some places are constrained, some places aren't. Here's where it would happen, an environmental sense. When I'm thinking about, when you hear you talking, I'm thinking about, like in a village area, maybe you've got this in this Byfield village. I mean, we've got a 2-acre zoning requirement for a 2-family house, right?
Right.
Without water. With water, it's 60,000 square feet.
Okay. So, I mean, if you had let's say, around,
Meaning a well is 2 acre.
Yes.
like, this doesn't apply then to what I was thinking about. It was just sort of like in that area around the old town hall. house there could be a two-family house, I mean, you just sort of double the density.
Those are small though. You
I
mean
mean,
the
I
Montgomery,
agree
you mean
with this.
Montgomery
I'm
Park?
just sort of it's-
Right, if all of a sudden they
you
go
turn
to two
every
families.
single-family house into a two-family house, you've got twice as many houses.
How have we done with our accessory apartments? That would be good to know for that meeting. With, because we passed the ordinance about 4 years ago. And so it allowed it to be freestanding and they could rent them to non-family members. I just don't know how many have been built.
Well, there's one being built on Baldwin Farm right now.
Oh, no, we know that. That was the, yes, I know. But you don't know how many.
I don't, I know that Sam feels that it's been pretty successful, but I'm not sure how many detached we have.
I think we could have that for the meeting.
I know I was the first.
You were? You did it attached. Detached?
The barn.
Okay. All right, number 4. Anything else on that? That's good discussion. I mean, that to me has been the crux of the problem of the town. 1,000 old guys and no young kids. Goal number 4, update the town's open space and recreation plan. That's just,
The rec committee's working on that.
yeah, we need to do it. Number 5, oh, who's working on it?
The recreation
Are they?
committee, because they're struggling with what space do we have and what are we gonna do with it? There's space that the
Are
town
they
owns.
doing it with money or are they doing it on their own?
No, they're looking at identifying what they have and coming up with a plan.
Oh.
Right, that's different from the open space and recreation plan though, which
Oh,
is a,
okay,
is a process that's,
okay.
I mean, it's a solid component that needs to get.
It's like a 100-page report that they did
Oh, okay.
back in 2009. So that's needs to be done. Number 5, ensure high-quality internet and cell phone service. I'm not sure if the town can really do this, but this is meant to reflect the increasing number of Newbury residents work full or part-time from home. Additionally, a number of residents run businesses from their homes. Convene a meeting of local, see
This
if
was
the
covered
problem.
in the implementation plan, when we talked about, supporting people that have
Businesses.
businesses in their homes, though.
And this is simply saying, make sure they have I mean, I happen to be in an area where I get no cell phone service. Just Old Town Hill is in the way. So I can't, I mean, every once in a while I'll walk out in the backyard and I can hook up and call. Otherwise I can't. You have,
Now I can picture you holding it up.
Yeah, it's true.
To send a message.
it's true. So that's why I wrote it.
Yep.
And then, goal number 6, expand library hours. Now, I don't know, I hear that they did expand them.
they're now open starting at 10 in the morning.
So is that enough, or, I mean, I just think it's silly to have a facility like that, which is such a great facility that's open part-time, but I'm not sure.
Let me touch base with Jean and see.
Yep.
But in the last few years, I've seen, appears to be a huge improvement in the library, in terms of hours
Is that
and
right?
usage, yeah, I very frequently. It's a great library.
It is.
It's
It isn't
a
open
wonderful
all the time.
facility, and I know a lot of people complain, say it should have been put out here, it's absolutely should have been put out here, it's exactly what needs, where it was needed.
Yeah.
John, I'm further away yet.
Well,
Goal 7,
What's goal 7?
provide a location at the transfer station for landfills and composting.
See, it wasn't mentioned anywhere in the report, so let's put it in.
But when we met at, the town hall, the old one,
Yeah, compost waste.
Michael Harriman, who's a great advocate, well, identified the need, shall we say.
yeah, that's
Okay.
huge, yeah.
We'll put it in.
And the other thing, which may go way beyond the purview, is, the intermunicipal agreement at some point, I think could be something that we looked at between us and Newburyport, whether that becomes a vehicle to
For,
work out a deal on yard waste, because they've got that big composting station. But the,
Well, but that's under, that, they have a real problem up there, don't they? I mean, that's in, what's the name of it, what's the name of the road where it is? Crow Lane?
the
Oh,
landfill's a problem, but the composting station is actually.
Working well?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
The composting station, unless it's changed, what they've done is they've taken, they had somebody come in and take the compost out. And in payment for that, they bring a reduced amount of composted material, which is free to the residents.
Right.
And that's a great deal.
It is, and you can also bring the larger diameter things and they chip it and send it off for burning.
I would agree with you, I'm surprised the town doesn't do something on
Does
compost.
Pearson still do it?
He does, but he charges, I think,
Yeah.
something.
No,
You
he
get a s-
charges, then he sells the stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get some, if they had a facility at the transfer station, you could get a sticker or whatever it takes, cause to cover some of the cost, but it'd just be a way to,
I
you know,
don't-
bring the yard waste as
There's
opposed to
not
burning.
any-
Well, the
There's no
thing is,
room there to do that.
if they take the yard waste and they chip it, it's relatively clean yard waste, they take it up to Maine and sell it and make power out of it.
Right?
Yeah,
And,
And that's
So-
what Newburyport does, is, I
do
understand.
they? Well, you can see they have a demand more for it because they have so many dense, you know, units that have no place to put the waste. I mean, it just,
And we'll soon be there.
mine goes in my wetlands.
Get rid of that.
Everybody does that.
No,
You know what bothers me, and this is a problem, the people across the street from me, they got a small lot and they just take everything, and they just take it over the other side of the street.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's like this on it,
Mhm.
and they just keep, you know, well, nobody said anything, we'll just keep.
Yeah, just keep
bringing
on
it over.
piling it over.
And then when the next guy up says, oh, it's good for them, I'll do that too.
Sure. Where's that, where do you live? I can bring some stuff over there myself.
I mean, it's.
Don't tell them.
Seems to-
I know where you live though.
I'm surprised there's not any, contractors dumping stuff off.
No, there really is an issue on Plum Island. Yeah, you can hire
Sure.
contractors to come in, take it away and all that, but it is a expense more unique to Plum Islanders
I think
because
so,
you can't burn at all.
right.
So you can take leaves and grass clippings down to Mellow and Georgetown.
Is that free?
I think it's free,
You know, I mean, maybe that
but it
would
may
be
get,
something for, you know, leaves and grass clippings, they have a dumpster there at the transfer station, and they just haul it to it.
You know, I think it is free, yeah.
Now, so in all honesty, what do you guys on Plum Island do with your stuff?
Well, I had a good friend who just moved to the Cape and he had a sticker to go to the Newburyport transfer station. Basically, we pay to have it hauled away. You have to get a landscape guy to come in. But now we're gonna see Dan's house, I guess, but
Not
it really is, because it just piles up until it's hauled away by
Our
others.
neighbors, do it on somebody else's.
Hmm,
Okay.
yeah,
And there aren't that many lawns up there, but certainly cutting back on the rose bushes or the bayberries or the plum, and that management shrubs. And it piles up.
all right, anybody else have anything else they wanna add? I'll tell you where I think we are, that I think we've gone through the economic development, the housing, the land use, the community facilities, and transportation, so 5 items, right through the implementation components. We now have to redo some of those. Transportation a little bit, we need to add some stuff, we need to now redo some of the stuff in land use, we need to redo some of the stuff in, what we did this evening in the recreation stuff. We have outstanding the cultural and, historic resources that we hope to get to this summer.
and natural resources.
That's
Are
what
you
we
gonna send it to me?
I will,
Yeah, okay. It's hard to do it.
I'll put it on the dock.
That's, yeah, you might be able to look at that and start working on it, you know, I mean, I don't think there've been a lot of changes in the natural resources, there might be. And the historic resources, we lost one building that I was aware of, and that was
can send an edited version of that, an updated version to the Historic Commission. Just haven't been able to get together to talk about it.
And then, you know, maybe it looks like that would probably, assuming that we probably won't get together in July and August, we might get together again in September or something, after we've taken a look at this stuff. Does that make sense to you? Yeah.
I guess it depends on everybody's schedules too.
Well, it's a summer schedule, it's not, I don't push anybody in July and August, especially since we've got work to do. And this has been a very productive, session, where I think we've made some changes, and I think that we've learned some things that really I think are gonna be helpful in the long run. So I feel pretty good about it. So I think that with that, we'll say that we would not meet again until probably September, I guess. Does that fit okay with you? I think it's Martha, myself, Rachel, and Tony, have some writing and rewriting to do, and so we'll do that. And, it would be nice if we could get the thing done and present it at, fall town meeting. Well, that would be ambitious. Why don't we say that's what we're trying to do? Yeah, let's do that. It's a good time to do it as opposed to this spring, cause there's so much less on their agenda, they might focus on it, I don't know. You know, that was at the fall town meeting that these dark people put in the demolition delay, bylaw and sailed through and with flying colors. I said, wow, how'd they do that? They knew when to bring it forward.
Yeah, didn't tell anybody.
All right? Not bad, 9:30.
Adjourn?
Adjourned. Thank you all.